Welcome to the Wealthy Practitioner Podcast. I'm Dr. Nikki Cottis.
I'm Dr. Alejandro Elias.
And I'm Dr. Gabrielle Manto. Together, we help wellness practitioners build profitable, scalable businesses without sacrificing their health, their families, or their freedom.
On this podcast, we'll talk profit, leadership, and ownership, so your business works for you, not the other way around.
This is the Wealthy Practitioner Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wealthy Practitioner Podcast. My name is Gabrielle, and I am one of your TWP support coaches, and I'm one of your co-hosts for this podcast. As always, I am so honored that I get to spend a few minutes each month with you guys. And so today I wanted to talk about the top 3 mistakes that I made in 2025 that are truly shaping my 2026. And so I know we talk a lot about success and the things that we've crushed and our goals, but I also wanted to share some of the things that I messed up on that I am not necessarily calling a failure. It definitely exposed some things that I still need to work on, that I still need to heal through, so that I needed to step up in my leadership role as well. And I'm also so grateful for these learning lessons, because I know that because of them, I'm going to show up differently in 2026. And so going right into it right away, the first mistake that I made was self-sabotaging when things are working. So last year, I put together a whole PowerPoint presentation for Trey, basically saying like, hey, this is why I want to add this new marketing platform to our practice. So I was so strongly convicted. I was confident. I had data to show him all of the things. And so what that turned into was actually not a good thing whatsoever. So yes, this was an investment into our business. But what we saw was that it disrupted communication. Our clients were confused. We had zero meaningful growth, even though we implemented quickly, because we are fast implementers and we take action quickly. But there really was no return on our investment. And again, it just confused our clients and disrupted communication. We had a text that went out to all of our clients and our leads wishing them a happy birthday, which was not ideal too, even though it was the most response that we've ever had within an email or a text that have been sent out to our whole entire lead base or client base. And so the reflection was that this wasn't necessarily a marketing mistake. It was a nervous system one. So things were working. So why would I change them? And so this is where I saw that I was starting to self-sabotage when things are going really, really well. I'm like, let's just mess it all up by adding an additional thing when we didn't really need it. And so the subtle self-sabotage was truly disguised as optimization. So that's not what we wanted. And so the real lesson here is that we didn't need more platforms. Growth doesn't always require action. Sometimes it requires leaving what works alone. And so it was a very expensive lesson. However, it is okay because I learned a lot from it too. So the decision in 2026 is that we are using fewer tools, fewer platforms, fewer changes. Stability is in fact a strategy. And if it is working, don't touch it unless there's a measurable reason why. And so this is why we preach literally from the mountaintops that we need to be tracking our stats. We need to be calculating our ROIs, our cost acquisition. We need to be tracking all of these things so that we actually make decisions that are going to move the needle in our business so that we can make fewer and fewer mistakes or learning lessons here. Mistake number 2, which this is by far probably the biggest mistake of 2025 that is truly making the biggest impact for me, probably in my life, but most is essentially in 2026. So mistake number 2 was reactivity cost me my authority. So to give you a little bit of a backstory, I had a provider that we deeply, deeply supported on every level. And so not just through their birth and their postpartum journey and their feeding journey, but we also promoted their business. We referred our friends and family and our clients. We had them teach at our community events and our coffee chat events too. And so when they stopped care, we had to go through our stop protocol and our stop system because we do not play favorites in our office. Everyone goes through the same system to make sure that everything is fair, that make sure everything is calculated, that there is no payment, there's no refunds, anything like that. And so when we relayed this and communicated this to this provider who was also a patient, they took it out on our team. So they rewrote the narrative. They said that we weren't supportive at all to make sure that our team tells us this. And so I truthfully reacted emotionally. So what I did is that I sent a voicemail back apologizing for the fact that, they did not feel supported, even though there was evidence that we supported them significantly. And also what I did was I removed them as a follower from our social media and unfollowed them myself. Now, I know this is very middle school and very petty of me, but I was so tired. I was like, I don't need these negative people in my life. I don't need this type of energy. And so I need to completely remove myself from this situation. And so what happened is that this provider ended up calling me out for this too. And so what I realized is that this wasn't about the provider whatsoever. It was about the unresolved residue from being burned so many times from providers before. And so old wounds were driving a present reaction. And so the real lesson here was reactivity gives away leadership, and authority requires space between trigger and response. And so what I also learned too is that, and this was a great opportunity for me to be a leader, is I need our team to protect our peace as well. Just as much as I stick up for them, I support them, I make sure that they are in the right path, that they are also being rewarded and supported. They also need to protect our peace as well. And so if that means that, hey, just so you know, this is what happened, they should have taken ownership on that. So I didn't necessarily need to react so intensely. However, I take full responsibility because that is radical responsibility. The decision that I'm making is one, there's the 24-hour rule. And so I need to sleep on it, take a breath, relax, decompress for 24 hours before I respond. No decisions from an emotional charge or from an emotional state. And so my job is not to win the moment. My job is to protect the standard. And I also should say too, that Trey was constantly trying to coach me through this and being like, don't do that, don't do that. But my stubbornness and my ego and my emotions truly took over and won the moment too, which was not ideal. So this is probably the biggest learning lesson that is ultimately not just going to impact my 2026, but honestly, probably the rest of my life too. And so finally, leads me to mistake number 3. So skipping the basics during a growth moment. So another quick backstory, we ran a new patient promotion, which we absolutely crushed. So execution was solid internally. But I failed to leverage referral and strategic partners. And so this is something that I talk about even in TWP and during our marketing trainings, as well as that we need to make sure that our organic marketing is super, super solid, that we need to leverage our referral partners and our strategic partners. And in this moment, I needed a mirror up in front of my face too. This is something that I preach upon. Why am I not following my own teachings or our own rules or our own frameworks? So I tried to outmarket fundamentals. I tried to outmarket our foundation. And so the lesson here is that the basics compound over and over and over again. Organic always outperforms shortcuts, and relationships will always 10x your return. They will absolutely catapult your success and really 10x your reach in your community too. And so the decisions that I'm making in 2026 is that promotions are never to be ran in isolation, and that referral partners are activated first and not last. So all this to say is that these mistakes weren't necessarily catastrophic, but they definitely changed my neurology, my mindset, so that I can take and make 2026 stronger. So where am I fixing? And things I want you to ask yourself too. Where are you fixing? Where am I fixing? What isn't broken? Where are you reacting instead of leading? And where are you skipping the basics because you think you're past them? And so 2026 isn't about doing more. It's about doing what works without flinching. And so throughout all of this, I know that I'm the problem in this situation, but I'm also the solution. And we say that ad nauseum at The Wealthy Practitioner. I take radical responsibility for all of this, and truly these lessons are going to help me even more in 2026 and even beyond my life. So if this is something that you related to, or I would love to know even some of the learning lessons that you have gone through in 2025 that are absolutely going to shape your 2026. As always, I'm super honored to be with you guys each and every month, and I will see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Wealthy Practitioner Podcast. If you want to connect with other practitioners just like you, be sure to join our Facebook group at The Wealthy Practitioner, and be sure to follow us on Instagram. See you next week.